The Galactic University's atmospheric science class had seemed routine when Professor Zelnoth announced their field trip destination. 40 students from 20 different species would observe weather phenomena on various worlds throughout the semester. Nobody expected their first stop to be Earth. "This is a mistake," chittered Vix, a Flitwick student whose homeworld experienced gentle mists and soft breezes. "Earth is a Class 12 death world. We shouldn't be anywhere near it." "Nonsense," Professor Zelnoth replied, his crystalline form refracting the shuttle's lights. "We'll observe from a safe orbital position. Earth's weather patterns are fascinating, violent, yes, but perfectly safe to study from space." The human exchange student, a young woman named Dr. Riley Chen, looked up from her datapad with an expression the aliens had learned to recognize as concern. "Professor, what time of year is it in the North American sector?" "Early spring, I believe." "Why?" Riley's face paled. "We need to adjust our orbit. Now." "Dr. Chen, I've been teaching atmospheric science for 70 cycles. Professor, with respect, you've never seen tornado season." Before Zelnoth could respond, the shuttle's sensors began screaming alerts. On the view screen, Earth rotated peacefully below them, except for one region where massive spiral formations of clouds churned with terrifying violence. What is that?" whispered Zorth, a Granite Collective student whose species had never seen weather more severe than light dust storms. "That," Riley said quietly, "is a supercell thunderstorm. Actually, that's about 15 supercells. It's May in Oklahoma. This is normal." "Normal?" Vix's antennae stood straight up in alarm. The class watched in horror as the shuttle's sensors provided data. Wind speeds exceeding 300 km per hour. Hailstones the size of a Flitwick's head falling from the sky. Lightning strikes delivering billions of volts of electricity, each bolt carrying more energy than some species' entire power grids. "The atmospheric violence index is off the scale," Professor Zelnoth muttered, his academic curiosity overriding his alarm. "The electromagnetic interference alone would disable most Starship navigation systems. That's why Earth's ships are heavily shielded," Riley explained. "Our commercial aircraft routinely fly through or around storms that would tear apart most alien vessels. We've been building weather-resistant technology since before we had computers." A Velthari student named Silren, whose species communicated through electromagnetic pulses, suddenly convulsed. I can feel them. The lightning strikes. There are thousands. Hundreds of thousands. All across the planet. Constant. Earth averages about 100 lightning strikes per second, Riley confirmed. About 8.6 million strikes per day. The shuttle lurched suddenly. Alarms blared. "Impossible!" Zelnoth exclaimed. "We're in high orbit. We're 400 kilometers above the surface. The storm is reaching us," the shuttle's AI announced. "Electromagnetic interference increasing. Navigation systems compromised." On the view screen, the students watched something that would haunt their nightmares for years. The supercell below had spawned something that looked like a finger of God reaching from the clouds to the ground, a massive, rotating column of air and debris. "That's an HFY tornado," Riley said, her voice tight. "Wind speeds probably around 500 km per hour. It's going to stay on the ground for maybe 30-40 minutes. It'll carve a path of destruction about 2 kilometers wide and maybe 80 kilometers long. How do humans survive this?" Zorth asked, his rocky form actually trembling. "Basements. Storm shelters. Early warning systems. And a lot of luck." Riley pulled up statistics on her datapad. "But that's just tornadoes. We also have hurricanes, storms so large you can see them from space, with wind fields spanning 1,500 kilometers. Blizzards that drop meters of frozen water. Monsoons that reshape coastlines." She looked around at the terrified alien students. My grandmother lives in Kansas. She's seen 6 tornadoes from her front porch. She just watches them, drinks her coffee, and waits to see if she needs to go to the basement. Your grandmother is insane, Vic stated flatly. No, Riley said with a slight smile. She's human. We're all descended from people who looked at weather that could kill them and decided to live there anyway. We built cities in hurricane zones, tornado alleys, earthquake regions, and volcanic shadows. Not because we're stupid, but because we're stubborn. The shuttle shook again as another electromagnetic pulse from the storms below interfered with their systems. We need to move to a higher orbit, the AI announced. Recommendation: minimum 1,000 kilometers to ensure safe distance from atmospheric phenomena. Professor Zelnoth stared at the data streaming across his instruments. The storms below were releasing energy equivalent to small nuclear weapons. Multiple storms. Simultaneously. Across multiple continents. How, he asked slowly, did humanity develop space technology while living under constant atmospheric bombardment? Riley shrugged. We got used to it. You know the Wright brothers, the first humans to achieve powered flight? They chose to test their aircraft in North Carolina specifically because of the strong winds. We've been using our deadly weather as a training ground since the beginning. A thought occurred to Zorth. The human military, they train in these conditions? Train in them? Riley laughed. They use them. There's a reason Earth-based troops have a reputation in the galaxy. Anyone who can operate in an environment where the sky randomly tries to kill you doesn't find combat all that stressful. The shuttle finally reached safe orbit, 1,200 kilometers above Earth's surface. The students could still see the massive storm systems churning below, their lightning visible even from this distance. Professor, Silran asked weakly, what's our next destination? Zelnoth checked his itinerary. Venus. We'll observe the sulfuric acid clouds and... Venus is easier than Earth, Riley interjected. Venus is predictable. The weather on Venus doesn't change. Earth's weather is chaotic, violent, and creative. We had scientists studying weather patterns for centuries before we could reliably predict them even a few days in advance. She pulled up an image on the view screen, a satellite photo of Earth showing storm systems scattered across the planet like wounds. This is just a normal Tuesday. Wait until you see what happens when we get a solar storm or a volcanic eruption. Those can affect weather patterns for years. Vix made a sound like escaping air. I want to go home. Noted, Professor Zelnoth said, though he couldn't tear his eyes away from the data. In all his years studying atmospheric science, he'd never encountered anything like Earth. It was a planet where the atmosphere was actively hostile to life, where storms appeared with terrifying regularity, where the very air could kill. And humanity had not only survived, they'd thrived. They'd built cities, civilizations, and eventually starships, all while their sky tried to murder them on a regular basis. Dr. Chen, Zelnoth said slowly, perhaps you should teach the next few classes. I believe we have much to learn about adaptation. Riley smiled. Happy to help, Professor. Though fair warning, we're entering hurricane season in a few months. The storms get bigger. The entire class groaned. That night, Vic sent a message home, the humans are insane. Their weather could destroy our entire fleet. They call it spring. I'm requesting immediate transfer to literally any other university. The response came back, transfer denied. You need to understand what humanity survived to reach the stars. It will help you understand why they're the way they are. Vix looked out the viewport at Earth below, watching lightning flash across the night side like a war zone. Understanding humanity, Vix decided, was going to be terrifying. Retriclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.